How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Beis, Daf 52 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, what are we doing? Okay, what am I going to tell you? Okay, what am I going to tell you? My school. Okay, what am I going to tell you? Okay, all right, we're starting Daf Nun Aleph Mud Beis. About five lines before the bottom, by the two dots, Tanur, but the rabbis taught. So we don't accept deposits from a married woman, nor from an eved, nor from a minor, because in all those scenarios there is a concern that maybe it was taken, that the deposit was taken unlawfully from her husband, from the adon, from an adult or whoever was supervising the child. Now, if one receives a deposit from a married woman, he should return it to her. V'meisa, if she's gestorben, so return it to her husband. Kibel, right? So the reason why you return it to her is because we don't want to assume that she's that she's a thief. So we don't say, we don't give it to her husband and be like, hey, here's this money, your wife deposited by me, but I bet she took it from you, the thief, and he gives it to the husband. Says, can you imagine what chutzpah? No, you assume she's not a thief, but you also don't take it, you give it back to her. But if she's gestorben, so then memele, her husband anyways inherits her, so then you give it to the husband. Okay. Kibel min ha eved, if you receive the deposit, if one receives a deposit from an eved, so yachzor eved, so return it to the eved. The imes yachzor rabba, if the eved is gestorben, so then you return it to the adon. Kibel min ha, if one receives a deposit from a kohen, yaiselo skula, so make some kind of a trust, right? Because if you give the deposit back to the kid, what's the kid going to do? He's going to lose it. You may as well throw it in the Dead Sea. So rather put the deposit in trust, and the Gemara is going to explain soon what exactly that means. V'imeis, and if the child is gestorben, so yachzor liyarshav, so you return the deposit to the heirs. Now, in any of these cases, if they said at the time, on their deathbed, now Rashbam points out it doesn't have to be on the deathbed, but that's probably the most probable scenario. Shall ploni hein. So, for example, if a wife, gave somebody a third party a deposit, and then, so the halacha is that you would give it back to her. If on her deathbed, she says, really the deposit belongs to so-and-so, so then you give it to so-and-so. So, and as the Rashbam points out, it doesn't necessarily mean that she has to be on her deathbed, just that if she wasn't on her deathbed, she would probably just handle it herself. She wouldn't tell people exactly that she, took the deposit from so-and-so, that it really belongs to somebody else. She would have gone directly to the person who she deposited by and explained to them the situation and gotten it back. She wouldn't have told other people about what she did, right? So that's why we say she's on her deathbed, just because that's probably the most probable case why she'd be telling other people. But anyways, if she says to other people that the deposit didn't come from her husband, it came from so-and-so, so then, so shaploni, and so yaisek kifeirushan, okay, so give it back to so-and-so. Ve'im lav, but if you don't trust that really it came from so-and-so, maybe, right, you're skeptical, right, the person who received the deposit doesn't trust this woman, he's skeptical and thinks that really she did take it from her husband, but she didn't want to admit it. So then, okay, if he's skeptical, fine. So yaise perish the ferushan. So give it to the husband instead. Fine, say it. Divisu de Rabba bar Chana's wife, Kika Shachva, when she was dying, Amra, she said, Ani kife, these earrings that I have, de Marta uvnei Marta. They belong to Marta and Bnei Marta. So Marta was the, we're talking to see this in Masechta Sanhedrin. Rabba bar Chana, I guess he's the grandson of Chana. Now, Rav, his father was Avo. I think Chana, Avo, Marta and Chia, I believe. We'll see in the Gemara in Sanhedrin. But I think they were all brothers. Which means, or maybe Marta was was Marta a boy or a girl? I can't remember. But anyways, I think they were all family, they were all mishpacha. And therefore, so he says, so on her deathbed, Rabbi Barbachana's wife says that these earrings belong to Marta and Bnei Marta, also Lakame Dirav. So now, Rabbi Barbachana came before his first cousin once removed, Rav, right? Because Rabbi Barbachana was the grandson of Chana, and Rav was the son of Evo, who were brothers. So I guess that makes them first cousins once removed. So L'kami de Rav. So Rabbi Barbachana went to Rav. Amarlein Rav says, look, ime hemna lach, if you trust her, if you believe her, so asay keferusha, so then return it to Marta. Ve'ilo asay perusha perush leferusha, and if you don't trust her, you think that maybe it's really yours, your earrings, well then you just take it yourself. V'ikadam, those who say achi, those who say like that, hachi amar, this is what Rav said to Rabbi Barbachana, I amida lach, if, right, so I've said ferusha, so there's two ways to understand this. The Rashbam writes two ways. One is to say that if Marta is wealthy, and therefore it makes sense that they would be giving away earrings, well then it makes sense. Alternatively, if your wife is like a very friendly person with a lot of friends, that it makes sense that people would give her gifts, then oichet, then return it to, Marta. V'lo, but if it doesn't make sense, so asay perish lefusha, well then, you can keep it for, you can, I guess, take it yourself, if you think that maybe it came from you. So we said that if you received a deposit from a cotton, so you put it in trust. What does that mean? So my skula, what's the trust? Rav Chizda Omar Sefer Torah, Rab Bar Rav Huna Omar Diklo De'ochu Mine Tamri. So Rav Chizda says it means a Sefer Torah. Keilu, meaning you invested in a Sefer Torah, because Sefer Torah is something that returns dividends. Right? You write a Sefer Torah, and then not only does the child have a Sefer Torah, you can also learn from the Sefer Torah. What does the Rashbam say? So the keren, the principle is there. You have the Sefer Torah, the value of the Sefer Torah, but you can learn from it. I assume that's the point, right? That you learn from it and you get value from it. You get peiris. So therefore you should invest in a Sefer Torah for the Yingel. Rabbi Bar Rav Huna's Omar, he says, Dikla da'achol mina Mine Tamri. You invest the money, I guess, in a palm tree, because it will provide dates for the Yingel to enjoy. Alright. Now a father does not make a chazakah, cannot make a chazakah in his child's property, nor can a child make a chazakah in his father's property. Omar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, afilu cholku, even if they are no longer, he's no longer samach hashulchanu shalaviv, right? He's grown up, he's moved out of the house. Right, so meaning Memele, if he's still dependent on his father, so obviously if the child is like eating the father's fruits, okay, of course he can't make a chazakah that way if he's dependent on his father. But if he moved out of the house already, they're living separate lives and each one supporting themselves on their own. So then maybe in that case, the child would be right. There would be a possibility of making a chazakah. So it says of Yosef, even though they, are no longer dependent on one another, still, no chazakah is possible. Rav Amar Chalku lo. Rav says, no. Once they've split, well then, no. Meaning, right, no means yes. Meaning, no, this halacha does not apply, i.e., there can, at that point, be a chazakah. Amar Yirmiyah Midifti, says of Yom Midipti, over Rav Papi, Uvda. Rav Papi once paskined in a scenario that chalku, that they split, that a father and the son had split, meaning that they were no longer dependent on one another. I'm sorry, what? Over Rav Papi Uvda chalku lo kirava. right? And he said that since the father and son split, well then the halacha of the Mishnah does not apply, i.e., there could be a chazaka, like Rava says. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok ishtoili Rav Chia me Hurmiz Ardashid, that Rav Chia me Hurmiz Ardashid told me, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, the ishtoile Rav Acha bar Yaakov, that Rav Acha bar Yaakov told him, Mishmei Rav Nachman bar Yaakov, in the name of Rav Nachman, Chol Kulo, that oichet, that once the father and son split, well then this halacha doesn't apply, i.e., there could be a chazaka. And that's taka the halacha, that once they split, there is a possibility of a chazaka. Tanami Ochimi Oichet learned in a brisa recently, Ben Shecholak Vishta Shen is Garsha, that a child who split from his father, right, he's on his own now, or a wife that gets divorced, Arein Kishar Kol Adam, they are like all the other people, that they can make a chazake. Givaldig. Itmar, it was stated, Echod mina achin shehoya nosevin nosem besoch aboyis, vayu onis vishtaris yotzin al shmo, v'amishali hem shenaftu li mi beis avi imo. Omarav olav lavi raya ushmol omer ala achin lahavi raya. Friends, what's this talking about? It's talking about a father passed away, right? And you have a bunch of and you have a bunch of heirs. You have a bunch of Yisayim, a bunch of kids. Fine. So the father passed away. There's a bunch of kids. Okay, so one of the kids, let's say the oldest brother. Let's just say the oldest brother. The oldest brother, he's taking care of everything. Okay, he's going through everything. He's dividing everything up. Okay. And it turns out that there are some documents, loan documents, sale documents that are in his name. His name is on them. There are documents that say that let's just call him Ruvain, the oldest brother, Ruvain lent $1,000 to somebody, and therefore, he has the right to collect it, right? That's not going to be split among the other brothers. He lent the money, he gets the money back. There are other documents that say that Ruvain, purchased property. So that property is not going to be divided among the entire estate. It's his property, right? His name is on the document. So again, Itmar was stated, Echad mina achin, so one of the brothers, Ruvain, let's call him, Shahaya Nosef v'Nosem b'soch habayis, he was taking care of the estate, he was dividing it up, and he was taking care of the Yerusha. V'hayu onis v'shtaris, and there were documents, there were loan documents, there were sale documents, there were loan documents, Yotzin Ashmo, and his name was the name on them, which means that he was the lender in the loans. But he lent money, and therefore he can collect the money that he lent. He purchased property, and therefore it's his property. They're not going to divide it up between all the heirs. He says, look, these documents belong to me. And if you're wondering, where did I get the money from? Right? Because all the brothers are wondering, like, what? I don't understand. How is Ruvain such a gvir? How does he own real estate? How does he lending money to people? I don't understand. Where's he getting his money from? We never knew about this. So Rav Olav Laviraya. So Rav says it's Ruvain's responsibility to bring a proof that these documents are legitimate and that it was in fact his money that he was spending. Shmuel Omar, whereas Shmuel says, look, we have a document that's written in his name. If the brothers want to contest it, they have to bring the proof to. They would have to disqualify these documents. Omar Shmuel says, Shmuel Modeli Abba, that Rav, however, admits to me that she'emes, that if Ruvain dies and now he has heirs, and now so according to Rav, Ruvain had to bring proof that his documents were legitimate. But Shmuel says that Rav admits to him that if Ruvain dies and he's got a bunch of kids, so now they're going to want the documents, right? The documents say that they're owed money from a loan, or that they have property that belongs to them. That's what the documents say. So Rav had said that when the father was alive, Ruvain had to bring the proof. Says Rav admits to Shmuel though that if Ruvain dies, the responsibility to bring proof does not transfer to the heirs, to his children. Rather, the rest of the brothers, the Reuven's brothers, would then have to disqualify. It would be upon them to disqualify the document if Reuven dies. Right? It would not be on Reuven's heirs to prove that the document is valid. Right? So again, Amar Shmuel says Shmuel Modeli Abba, that Rav admits to me that even though he says that it's Reuven's responsibility to prove that the documents are legit, she'emes, that if Reuven dies, however, ala ochin lahavi raya, well then the Reuven's brothers would then bring the proof to disqualify the documents, rather than Reuven's responsibility transferring to his children to prove that the document is legitimate. Maskif lo Rav Papa. But Rav Papa asks the kasha and Shmuel says, I don't understand. Klum to'anina luhu liyasme midid lo to'an lu avun? Are we all of a sudden going to argue, make an argument on behalf of the heirs when we would not make that same argument for their father? Right? Meaning, when Reuven was alive, we did not say the document is valid, it's got his name on it, the document is valid. If the brothers want to disqualify it, they have to disqualify it. It's a valid document. Otherwise, it's a valid document. We don't make that argument for the father. Rather, we say no. Right? According to Rav, Reuven would have to prove that it's a valid document. So if we're not going to argue on behalf of Reuven that it's a valid document, well then when he dies and the document now falls to his heirs, we're not going to make that claim on their behalf either. If we're not going to make the argument for the father, we're not going to make the argument for the son. Again, Maskavar Papa asks, Klum to Anina Lu Liyasmi, are we going to argue anything on behalf of the heirs, of Reuven's heirs? Midid lo tanu lu avun, that which we did not argue on behalf of Reuven himself? Rava, because after all, Rava apik zuga de sarbla v'safra da'agad to miyasme below raya. That there was a scenario where there were orphans, there were heirs, and they had I think fabric scissors or some kind of books, and now somebody comes with witnesses to say that, hey, those are my books, or those are my scissors. And Rava said that the heirs have to give it back to this fellow. Because these are things, scissors, books, these are things that people would normally lend out to other people. Like Ravuna Bar Oven sent that things that you normally lend out to other people or rent out to other people, and you said they belong to me, he's not believed. So meaning, right? So what happened there with the heirs? The heirs had scissors or books, and somebody comes and says, with witnesses, says, look, those scissors are mine, those books are mine. So now, in terms of chazaka, if we're talking about chazaka, so basically, if they could argue, right, well, I don't know, our father bought it from you, and now we have them, we have a chazaka, well then it would be theirs. But the thing is, you can't make a chazaka when it comes to things that are normally borrowed or rented out. And therefore, if their father would have made that argument, right, meaning if this guy would come with witnesses and say, hey, those are my scissors, and he would make the argument, well, I bought them from you and that's why I have them, that would not be enough. That argument would not be enough for the father. And therefore, if it's not enough for the father, it's not enough for the children either. And therefore, Rava made these heirs give back the scissors and the books. So we see that in scenarios where a particular argument would not work for the father, well then it doesn't work for the heirs either. And therefore, if according to Rav, it was Reuven's responsibility to prove that the documents were legitimate, and we did not argue on his behalf that you have the documents and therefore they're legitimate, we did not make that argument on Reuven's behalf. Rav says that Reuven has to make the proof. Well, then we're not going to make it on behalf of the heirs either, and therefore the heirs would be responsible to prove that the documents are legit. Unlike what Shmuel is claiming, that Rav says that if Reuven dies, then now all of a sudden Reuven's brothers need to prove that the document is not legitimate. Rather, if we didn't argue on Reuven's behalf that the document is legitimate, then we're not going to argue either on the heir's behalf, on his heir's behalf, that the document is legitimate. Kasha. So the Gemara says it's taka a kasha on Shmuel, because why would it make sense to say that according to Rav, if Reuven dies, then the heirs are off the hook, and it's Reuven's brothers who need to bring the proof? That wouldn't necessarily make sense. So the Gemara says kasha. There's an interesting Rashbam where he quotes machlokas, he quotes Rabbeinu Chananel, and then he disagrees with Rabbeinu Chananel about kasha versus tiyufta. I actually didn't review it today, but I think what he was saying there was that according to Rabbeinu Chananel, there's a difference between a kasha and a tiyufta. A tiyufta is a knockout. If it says tiyufta de Rav or tiyufta de Shmuel, tiyufta whatever, forget about it. It's done. But a kasha is something that you could potentially find a response to. Whereas the Rashbam disagrees and says no. I think what he was saying is that a tiyufta is from a brisa, whereas a kasha would be from a moraim. For example, over here we're asking a kasha from Rava. Alright, interesting. Amr of Chizda says, of Chizda lo shanu ella de ein chalukin be'isason. Aval chalukin be'isason emer me'isaso kimetz. Okay, so now this is important. Maybe you were wondering this. So if Chizda says that this whole thing about basically the brothers saying to Reuven, I don't understand where you're coming up with this money from. Well, that makes sense if literally they split everything. They even split their food. Literally, they all just kind of split all their expenses together, and therefore it's anathema. It's mind-blowing that all of a sudden it turns out that Reuven he's making loans, he's buying properties. Where are you getting this money from? We all split, we all tend to split everything evenly. Nobody gets more than anybody else. So in that case, their mind is blown, and therefore, we have the shaila of, or actually, what is Roshanu Adikam Rab? Yeah, so the Rashbam points out, meaning when Rab says that it's on Reuven to bring proof that these documents are legitimate, so that's only when all the brothers mamish split everything, and it's mind blowing how all of a sudden Reuven is affording all these things. So again, Amr of Chizda says, of Chizda lo shanu, when we say that Reuven has to prove that the documents are legitimate, is ela de'ein chalukim biyisasin, is when they mamish have no differences in their how they divide up their food and their mamish do everything together. Have a chalukim biyisasin, but if they divide things up, well then you don't necessarily know what the other person is doing with his portions and with his money and with his assets. So I'll say that Reuven took whatever was his, and he used that to buy property, to loan money. So then all of a sudden he doesn't have to prove himself. Raya b'mai, when we say that Reuven needs to bring a proof, what kind of proof does he bring? So Rabba Amar Raya b'edim, he has to bring witnesses to testify that these documents are legitimate. Rav Sheshes Amar Raya b'kiyum mashtar, Rav Sheshes says it's enough for him. He doesn't have to actually literally bring witnesses here right now. But if he, as a handpick on the shtar, right? If Bezdin ratified the document and vouched for the document and wrote, that the three of us sat here in Bezdin and we validated the shtar and they signed on it, so then that would be enough. Amalei Rav of Nachman says, Rav of Nachman, Harab, Shmuel, okay, so we've seen the opinion of Rab, who says it's Reuven's responsibility to prove that the documents are valid. And we've seen the opinion of Shmuel, who says that it is the brother's responsibility, right? Reuven's brother's responsibility to prove that the documents are invalid. Harabba of Rav Sheshes. We have Rabba and Rav Sheshes who talk about witnesses and Kiyum Shtaros, but according to Rav, who says that it's Reuven's responsibility to prove that the documents are valid. Okay, so Markamat Svirle. So Rava wants to know where Rav Nachman fit, where does he stand? So Rav Nachman responds, Onomas Nisa Yadaina, look, I know a brisa that the Brisa says, the Tani B'lin the Brisa, Echad min ha'achid, she'nosi v'nosim b'soch ha'bayis. So if you have one of the brothers, Reuven in our example, that he's sort of, taking care of the estate and dividing things up, managing it. But you own his vishtaris, and there's sale documents and loan documents, Yotzin al Shmo, that are written in his name. V'omer shalihein, and Reuven says, they're mine, shenoflim mibeis avi abba, that they came from mibeis avi ima, they came from my mother. I think we had said this earlier, right? But I think I didn't explain it well earlier. That meaning, all these brothers have the same father, which is why they're dividing up the estate together, but they may have different mothers, right? So Reuven's saying, look, I got this money from my mother's family, and this is my money that I'm spending. So all of Lavi Raya, so says the Brisa, Rav Nachman quotes a Brisa, that it's Reuven's responsibility to prove that it's a valid document. V'chein, and similarly, ha'isha shaynosis v'nosim b'soch habayis, right? If the widow is managing the estate on behalf of her children, who are the heirs, vayu onis v'shtaris yotzin al shma, and there are documents, there are sale documents and loan documents with her name on it. V'amra, and she says, shalihein, they're mine, shenaf l'limi beis avi abba, they came from my father's house. Or beis avi imor, they came from my mother's house. Oleh lavi raya, she would have to bring proof. My v'chein, what does it mean? And similarly? And similarly implies that like it's a shtickle chiddush. So you have the situation of Reuven, who's claiming that the documents are his, and even in the case of the mother, also there, she would have to bring proof. So Madatema, I may have thought Isha came in the shvicha la milsa, the amrei kotarcha kamayasme lo gazla miyasme kamash malan. Well, I may have thought to say that, come on, the mother, she is not going to be taking away from her children, from the heirs, and therefore, we're trusting her to take care of the estate. Of course, if she says that it's hers and she has these documents with her name on it, of course she's telling the truth. She's not going to want to, we're trusting her here. She's not going to want to ruin her reputation. So maybe we can trust that she's telling the truth. No, if she makes the claim that there's these documents that are hers, she also would need to prove that they are valid. Chaver, we're going to stop over here. We're stopping at an interesting point. Tomorrow we're going to start talking about these chazokos, right? The kind of chazokah that could be used as a kinyan. So that's going to be interesting stuff. And I'm very curious what's going to happen here in Eretz Yisrael. It's funny. It feels like we're just kind of waiting for our enemies to attack. Okay. All right, peace out.